Good afternoon.
Evening. How are we doing?
Oh, yeah, it is. Sunlight's getting later.
I suppose so. Yeah.
Yeah. So, last time we recorded, I think I had mentioned that there was a speed dating event that I was planning to go to the next day. And so I think we'd talked about
Mm.
that. I think so. Probably. And so, yeah, that happened. And I got. Um, Now, to set some context, I have had zero luck dating before. Um, Despite having got married and had a child and then divorced, that just kind of happened without me knowing how it happened. Although, yeah, but it wasn't that I was knowing what to do. And so there's been an ongoing process of trying to develop myself to get to a place where something romantic could happen through anything other than just me pining pathetically in the darkness.
Well, that's never going to work. That
Exactly.
second part, for sure.
Yeah.
I was just thinking while you were making that sentence that there's something about that formulation that bothers me,
Yep.
about the formulation of I didn't know what to do, and now I know what to do. Like it's an active process. Um,
Hmm.
my feeling is very much if you're doing it right, it's a bit like it was for you the first time around. It just sort of happens to you.
Yeah.
But most of it is, what do you say, restrictive. It's what not to do. Now,
Ah.
don't do these things, which is will blow it all up, and be yourself. And if it's the right person, then it'll work.
Yeah.
And the rest of it, I think the big difference is simply you decided that you wanted to do it, and then you went out actively looking for it,
Hmm.
and then you found it.
Yeah. And
And
it's been a good sort of guiding goal, but it hasn't been the be all and end all. Like there's an element of career. There's definitely my son. There's everyday life as
you
well.
can't sacrifice all things to one goal.
Hmm. Yeah.
And even if you do, like you achieve it, awesome. What now?
Yeah.
It's not helpful,
Yeah.
and you often end up if you actually do that, you'll end up sacrificing more important things.
Hmm.
Well, I don't know if there are more important things, but you'll sacrifice other important things
Yeah. Yeah.
in this case.
Yeah. So I went to the speed dating event and they take a so you get a card, you tick the woman that you'd like to meet again, and then they tally them up after the night and work out, okay, those two people both ticked each other, put them on a list and so on, and then you get an email a few days later or a couple of days later of, hi, here are the contact details of the people you matched with, so on.
What was the process like before we go into that? You
Um,
show up at the thing. What did it look like? What happened?
a whole bunch of tables with numbers on them, and the ladies all sat down at tables, and the guys went and picked a table, and then there was 3 minutes in which you could talk to them, and then you moved on to the next one, and then another 3 minutes, and you move on to the next one, another 3 minutes, and move on to the next one.
Right, so all in rotation together. You
Yeah,
only picked the first time.
yeah.
Okay. I feel like that first you have to pick which table to go to, and there's like 50 women and 50 guys, roughly.
30 in this one. 50 would be a bit extreme.
Okay.
Yeah.
Example. Was it the same amount? There would
Seemed to
have to
be.
be for it to work.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. There wasn't one table that was empty or something at all times or anything like that.
Uh, People had to leave at a few points through it, but I didn't really notice it, so it was handled.
Okay. Well, that's good. Yeah, I feel like that first initial one might almost be against the spirit of what it's meant to be, and I sort of have a feeling of like a that initial moment would be very tense and a whole
Hmm.
bunch of scrambling
Yeah. Well,
because all of the guys are immediately going to go, oh, I have to pick one, and every guy's going to look at every girl and immediately rank order them, and then all like compete for whichever one is statistically the highest to
no.
sit down there first.
Oh, in that sense, maybe, but you don't want to start with, hypothetically, because this isn't the way I approached it. You don't want to start with
Yeah,
the one that you
yeah, to do that.
have your eye on because you want to have a few to screw up first.
Well, see, that would be a smart move, but that doesn't mean all guys. Most
Yeah,
guys are
well,
not particularly smart when you're thinking about the hot girl.
yeah. The first woman I sat in front of, I misheard her age. I thought she said 39. She said 29. That got awkward.
Oh, rough.
Yeah. But yeah, so I went around the tables and then you tick everyone who you think you'll match with. So it's not sort of rank ordering and there's so many you can't track them. And well, it might be just because I wasn't looking around ranking all the women. I was probably more interested
Oh, I'm
in
more,
comparing with the guys.
I'm, I'm more just. That's interesting. You're doing status comparisons.
A little bit, yeah.
Well, yeah, that makes more sense. You're in competition with them as the small collective pool because all of the women are there because they're interested in finding one man.
Hmm.
So they are directly your competition for the night.
Hmm. And that's the thing that, like, you talked about it being, I guess, artificial, not like the natural way that you would find someone. And I, in a simple sense, I agree with you, but I personally, at least, found the knowledge that even if it was only for a short time, the knowledge that the woman that I was talking to was actually looking for a relationship
Mm.
very relieving. So I can just say, okay, what are you looking for in a relationship?
I think there's a few things to say there. Artificial, yes, it's a constructed scenario. But then again, all dating in any form of modern society is going to be quote unquote artificial process
Hmm.
because it's it's all based on cultural expectations, and those are going to be different for each culture. So in any sense, you could say that they're all artificial. They're not
Hmm.
whatever natural would be. I'm not actually sure I'd want to know what natural would be in a certain sense.
Well,
Um,
it's
I
like the
I
difference
don't know
between
if I said that
instinct.
was a bad thing.
That was the
Oh,
impression
I
I
see
got.
what you mean. Right. Um, what would be ideal is for it to be spontaneous in the natural, traditional way. I'm contradicting myself already. But I've been thinking about this, and I think in the modern times, it's actually a really good system.
Hmm.
And I think perhaps something that should be, I'm going to use the word, destigmatized to become more of a standard thing
Hmm.
for guys to go and do, girls to go and do when they're looking to meet a partner. Because we all have this sort of crisis of, I want to find someone. Oh shit, how do I do that?
Hmm.
We don't have families that connect together anymore to try and link up their kids.
Yep.
You don't find someone at the local church. You've
Yeah.
got maybe uni, but then uni's not a great selection pool anymore either.
Hmm. That's one of the things that I've seen talked about, the difference between if you have a village, right, you have a finite pool and you have a reasonable understanding of that pool. Like you don't get skewed by seeing Brad Pitt and Chris Hemsworth on the in the movies, and then you compare all the guys you meet in real life to that. You see the guys you meet, and you see them working and sweaty, and you see them relaxing and so on, and you get a good sample. because your sample size is your selection pool.
No, it's like grading on a curve.
Mm.
If you do too well in a class, you can be kicked out often because you mess
Mm.
up the rest of the students.
Ah, yeah. So then, within that scenario of a village, you'd have the stereotype of older ladies often who like to matchmake, or older might
Maybe.
be the wrong stereotype, but just ladies in general who like to matchmake, or even guys who are like, oh, I think you might work well with this family member of mine, and I trust you, so I'm going to introduce you, and that sort of thing. So it's not so much the going out and looking, it's the being chosen by members of the community to have the connection made. And of course, there's a spontaneous version, but there's still a artificial, as in a conceptual element to it a lot of the time, or a deliberate element.
I think it's a value that we have discarded in the West and almost looked down upon, which is quite sad. The the arranged marriage kind of setup that you're talking about. I know it's a
Mm.
bit. You don't want it to be forceful in any way. You want there to still be the option of no, not this person. But
Mm.
there is incredible value to families finding matches for their children. At some point, how early becomes a debate, but there's value in that. And it's another one of the things that we've lost is the family units themselves have collapsed, connections between people.
Mm.
We're all we're all we're all meant to fend for ourselves now.
Yeah, and the
And
knowledge
we're
of
told that that's good,
and the
that we
knowledge of
should do that.
how to take a not quite ideal situation and make it work sounds too forceful, but work out a way that it can work well together. Like there was someone who, I forget the context it was, but Indian background, arranged marriage is still very common over there, and so the idea in the way that we're discussing is that families would get together and the bride and groom might not get to know each other very much before they get married. Not in the way people would in the West, where they'd live together for years possibly before they get married. But the choice would be made, and then it's like, okay, this is the choice that's been made. We're going to stick with this and make it work. And then there's a community support structure around too to fill in the knowledge gaps and the skill gaps that are needed to make a relationship work, because it doesn't just happen. It's not find the right person and then it just works. And sure, that might happen sometimes, but that's the exception to the rule, possibly the one that proves the
That's
rule.
why, yeah, that's why people in those kind of scenarios, the arranged marriage countries, have far higher success rates. Like
Mm.
they get divorced way less often and are happier in their marriages,
Mm.
even though they didn't know each other very well beforehand.
Mm.
But then you also have the other side of things, which is the those people wouldn't have had any previous partners before they got married,
Mm.
and the whole society would have been very strict on you need to figure this out. You can't just break up. There
Mm.
are actual consequences.
Yeah, and it's not just a hammer or a stick of you must work it out. It's also the carrot in a sense of loving family members from both sides who are trying to support the couple who aren't making it work right so they can figure it
It's
out.
it's honor, which is something we don't understand anymore.
Mm.
Is duty. It is
Mm.
my duty to my family, to my community, to my nation, to make these sacrifices and make things work well.
Mm.
And if there's anything that we've lost, that's the worst thing. It's
Mm.
probably that.
There's elements of that that segue into what I'll be talking about later. So I might
Mm.
carry on and then
Yeah, yes, yes,
yeah, yeah.
yes,
So
do the rest of the story.
went round the thing, and I feel like I ticked about a third of the woman, which sounds very lack of filtery, but to my mind, the tick represented would I have a coffee with you type thing. Because it's like three
Yeah.
minutes. And the way I was presenting myself to was almost trying, not quite like this, but in a way that would repel the ones who weren't what I was looking for. Like I had, what was it? I don't think any of the other guys were doing this because a lot of the ladies seemed surprised at my approach with this, that it was, this is me, I'm a single dad, 30 years old, engineer, such and such. I'm looking for a long-term relationship. I'm not looking for anything short-term. And I'm wanting a relationship where, with someone who would, how did I describe it? Who would negotiate a relationship. And I did use that phrasing, and I think that, was it you or someone else who'd had a different interpretation of the use of the word negotiate? Might have been someone other than you that I talked to about it. But the idea being that you've got two unique people who are going to come together to make a unique relationship. You can't predict what that's going to be like beforehand, but it has to be a two-person thing. And the idea of grievances being brought up is an important thing, but brought up in a, here is something, I felt upset when you did this thing. Let's work through it together, not this is your fault. And by, I think, I filtered with that approach.
Which I think was the right move.
It felt right. Yeah. Not that I have much of a sample size, but
I'm glad. It seems very along the lines of what we've talked about the last couple of times. We sort of tried to figure out what you should do in these scenarios. But it's you as well, which is the important part.
Yeah.
But yeah, that very strong upfront, this is what I'm looking for. Clear. I'm not wasting my time and I'm not wasting yours. And here are the things that you might not like. Because you also discussed you did that a little bit when we talked earlier.
Oh, that was and that's what you, later.
Oh, no, that's okay, right.
Yeah. So that was the night, and I had to leave early because I had to get home to the babysitter. But I only had like 5 out of the 30 left, and the whole thing went overtime. So yeah.
Before you go on, I want to know a bit more detail. You said that they were surprised at this approach. I was hoping you could expand on that slightly. What kind of reactions, what kind of things did they say? Said you spoke to around 25 of the women.
It wasn't negative. It was... Now, I wasn't watching the other conversations. I was focused on my conversations, obviously. But the thought that occurred to me, the interpretation, let me make that quiet, was that the other guys were trying to sell themselves. So that's the way I two-stage interpreted it. I felt like they were surprised, like, oh, well, okay. Like I wasn't trying to entertain. I wasn't trying to have a nice conversation. It was, we're here to talk about dating. It's like a few times I said, well, the conversation of the night, what are you looking for in a relationship? Like blunt, out there. And sorry?
You had 25 interviews for the position of potential partner.
Yeah, and there were a few of them where she just obviously wasn't interested, and I'm not sure what she was looking for, where she was just sort of silent, like, entertain me, and that was a little awkward.
Like, okay. Yeah, but at that point you're like, well, it's not you, so yeah, that's fine. We can sit in awkward silence for the next minute.
Yeah, and there were a few where... well, you obviously can't travel with your son, and I'm not in the country for long, so it's not going to work. So, okay, we'll just have a nice conversation for a couple of minutes. Yeah. But then there was one woman who comes up later in the story who, what was it? She had a slightly distinctive name, which I won't say on here. And she mentioned that it was a fast night, everything blurred together slightly, but I'm pretty sure she said that she wanted kids. And she's,
So she said that in the speed dating portion.
yeah,
Ah, that's
and
even better.
and that she hadn't speed dated before, and she'd had one relationship in the past that had been long distance and broken down through that and stuff.
Mm.
And when when I got the list of the women I'd matched with, I was like, I'm pretty sure that's who you were. And so she was. I got the feeling that she was the quiet girl who hadn't gone out much in a relationship sense. Sort of sweet and. The phrase unspoilt comes to mind, but that could be misinterpreted. Or,
Pure, maybe
yeah,
innocent.
yeah, yeah,
That's good.
yeah.
It,
And
it is actually something that men look for in women is purity and innocence. Not that we like to talk about that these days.
mm,
It's funny that you note that as a difference, as an exceptional note. The other
mm.
women that you spoke to were not this way.
They seemed worldly. Oh, most of them. Her note
Worldly.
was, yeah, worldly, like experienced in relationships. Like, okay, what are you going to do? Why should I go with you instead of someone else? Type thing.
Mm.
And
Yeah, you were just another man in the list of men that I've seen before.
mm, yeah, we're
Yeah, not
so
entertaining.
the list of contact details came through, and you advised calling instead of just texting. Um, and that fitted with the movement I've been making, driven to a reasonable extent, guided by a fair bit of your advice, but also by my own internal psychological explorations. So, I guess you've suggested paths forward, and I've explored them and found them good, rather than me just going along with what you say.
That's good.
Yeah, like
You
the
certainly want to be in charge of someone else's life.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
mm,
So like I've been developing my sense of internal power, if that makes
mm,
sense. Yeah, and working out what that
right.
means, and yeah, we've been
You're
through
trying
this.
to keep that distinction whilst also taking advice from others,
Mm,
which is a hard thing to do. Of I'm doing something that someone else recommended to me, but still trying to be like, no, this is my agency,
mm,
because it's easy to lose that, which is why why an actual therapist shouldn't actually tell you what to do,
mm.
which is it's a theft of agency,
Yeah.
and even if it results in success, it can ring hollow and make things fall apart even worse.
Mm. Yeah, because a therapist gets a bit of a position of power, and if someone then takes what they say as an authority figure rather than a conversation between equals, um, sort of sharing potential solutions, then it can, yeah, you do it because you were told to do it rather than because it was suggested and you found it good.
Yeah, and if it works, it's not because you figured it out; it's because they told
Mm.
you what to do.
Yeah.
Not your victory anymore;
Mm.
it's someone else's,
Yeah.
which is a defeat.
Yeah. One of the things that stood out to me in those conversations on speed dating night was that I felt like I was leading the conversations a lot of the time. And something that sort of brought home to me what feels like the gradual transformation I've had over the past while, because you look at it incrementally and there's no difference within any one short period. But I, in trying to get out more, I've been going to ice skating, and I sort of say hi to strangers in an effort to have conversations. And there was a guy there who I said that to, and we had an interesting conversation, moderately interesting conversation, and he was keen to meet up again. And um, turns out he's separated from his wife, and the kids are with her, and he goes down to see them on the weekends when that can happen, and such and such. And he, in the way he acts, reminded me of how I might have been a few years ago. Sort of tailing behind the person you find cool. Like he'd
Mm.
suggested a board games night. There's a group in the city that he knew that met up for board games, and I thought, oh, that'd be good fun. So I went along to one. Um, and then when he showed up to the night, he sat and spectated on the game I was playing, even though it went till 1 in the morning and everyone else had gone home, and he stayed there till the end of it. And it's like I remember, not quite to that extent, but that sort of following the person that I found cool type thing.
Here's an interesting question. How did you feel about him? And what did you think about him in that moment?
There's a few various levels of differing levels of consciousness and processedness, but there's definitely a hierarchy there that I feel like I'm above him in the hierarchy. And there's a little bit of sort of, you don't need to follow me around type thought. Like on the ice skating rink, he's a much better ice skater than me because he rollerbladed before and got good at that and so on. So I think I mentally, yeah, I rank him mentally as a much better ice skater than me. Um, but outside that environment, he seems a bit like a little bit of a pushover in the way that I feel like I was, although it feels like he is more of that, but that might be just the distorting of perspective because he had invited me to join him for a game of pool at a bar near the ice skating rink before ice skating one night, and so we had a game, and it was like, should we grab a drink? Yeah, why not? So he was suggesting, and I was taking charge, and it was almost like he was offering course of action, and I was deciding it.
Mm. It's just an interesting note that you have someone like that in your life.
Show up in my life. And I've been
Yeah.
wondering whether I should try and uh, say something like, I feel like I see my past self in the way you act, and just sort of broach that conversation and see how it goes.
If you feel like that would be something you should do, yeah,
Hmm.
I'm not going to advise one way or another because that's, you know, your prerogative, I suppose. I just
Hmm.
I just think it's really interesting to have that note of here's this person and I associate them like my past self because this is the way I used to behave. And then I also feel these internal feelings cropping up of like annoyance
Hmm.
or um I had another word, but I lost it. It was, yeah, annoyance, irritation,
Mild, but
dismissive.
present. Yeah, that. Yeah.
You can't help these things. Like
Yeah.
I can think off of my head of a bunch of people that I've encountered that I have those feelings towards.
Hmm.
And it's not something that you want to have with someone.
Hmm.
But you can't really help it. It's the status hierarchy making itself manifest through your nervous system and then forcing you to feel these, negative feelings towards another person. And I think it's doubly interesting when you yourself were once in that position, which I
Hmm.
was as well. And I think a lot of young men are or have been at this point in time in that kind of position. And then you encounter someone and you have that same sort of almost resentment.
Yeah, like, because when we met and had our first conversation, he suggested exchanging details to meet up again at the ice skating and such, and he's like, sure, why not? And then he was initiating conversations over text. Oh, why don't we meet up before the ice skating? Sure, why not? And there was part of me that was on the lookout because that sort of pattern could be someone with an ulterior motive, although he hasn't demonstrated anything of that kind. So it's like, okay, well, false alarm there, but oh well.
Besides raising his own status.
Yeah, it feels little bit like seeing someone who he perceived as impressive or higher in the sort of immediate status hierarchy that you get when you meet another guy. And it's like, okay, grab onto him type instinct. I'm not saying this is a consciously thought out manipulative plan. I'm saying there's an impulse of wanting to associate with someone.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty common,
Mm.
in all fairness. I've been thinking a lot about, I won't go into it today because I want to hear the rest of your story, but I've been thinking a lot about the status hierarchy and sexual selection and the fact that we understand it as human beings now. And it's only just becoming popular knowledge.
Mm.
And I really wonder what that's going to do to change humanity. Because I got a feeling that that idea itself, the understanding of that idea, is going to be on a similar level of impact of technological discoveries.
Mm.
You know, every now and then an idea comes along through science that changes the world. Often it's physics, you know, the nuclear bomb or the transistor, or through chemistry, the birth control pills. But I get the feeling that this idea germ is going to be one that changes things in a serious way as well.
Mm.
You know, once you understand the social game, can you play it the same? If you understand it, you can manipulate it.
I disagree in a sense because there have always been people who know how to manipulate, who through almost instinctive routes they understand how to play that game for themselves. Psychopaths are the prime example, but there's a broad range there. And the enunciation of it, while certainly an improvement over not having it enunciated, it's like I think that we had that in different words and different forms of understanding before. Like if you think of people whose life revolved around playing the social game, like nobles in a court, where it's all about social maneuvering, trying to one up or something, and that sort of same baboon politics plays out in various social situations. But the people who can play that best can rise to the top, and the understanding of that. I think the brain is built to do that, even if it's not enunciated and laid out. The brain is built to play that game because those who played the game best were most successful.
Yes. But I feel that there's a difference when the average person has incorporated that knowledge consciously.
Hmm.
And I wonder what's going to happen. Like, I could make a case that the rise of communism is directly related to this phenomenon of this becoming conscious.
Yeah.
Because what is communist ideologies other than a rejection of hierarchy itself? And the most important hierarchy is that of sexual selection. Wealth, status, positions of power, these are proxies for it. And those are the things that are rejected.
Yeah,
and it's very often people who are incredibly low on the sexual selection hierarchy that are pro those ideas. I feel there's a
Mm.
connection. And I think that you could make a case that the murders and deaths that came from those systems were a result of people starting to incorporate this knowledge and rejecting the game
Because
environment.
it starts out as this sort of abstract academic knowledge, and then it's slowly integrated into the culture. Like I'm thinking of like
Mm.
atomic theory or germ theory. Like when those were first proposed, they were
Germ theory is a good
revolutionary.
example.
Yeah, but
That's a really good
yeah,
example.
like the
Because
idea
that's
of
changed everything about our
washing your
biology.
hands. Like there was a book I found in a secondhand bookshop, and it was describing, was it heat or chemistry? Something like that. But it started right down with explaining the concept of an atom from like, imagine you have some water. You cut it in half. You have smaller water. Cut, 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 cut. Now you have a tiny drop so small you can't really see it. Put it under a microscope. Cut, 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 cut. Now we have a better microscope than any microscope that exists now, and you can just zoom in. Cut, 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 cut. Won't cut anymore. That is an atom. Like just explaining the concept from the top down to an atom is the smallest indivisible unit, but it's actually made of other units, and these, or that's a molecule, right? The molecule of water, and if you could look closely, you would see that this molecule of water is actually made of two atoms of hydrogen and one atom of oxygen, and so on. But it was explaining that concept from the top down, and while when it was discovered, invented, philosophical conundrum there, um, it was a very advanced thought that upended a lot of other thought. The consequences of that are slowly propagated through the rest of the culture. Ancient Greece, so got lost and taken up again and reinvented a couple of times along the way, probably, but it gets slowly propagated through. The contradictions that it causes are resolved and understood, and then you get this jigsaw where rather than finding a new idea and having to rewrite the whole jigsaw to incorporate it, it's like, here is this piece that fits in that slot in the jigsaw you already have a lot of bits of. So you don't need the whole jigsaw to have the consequences of a part incorporated into your understanding. Because the people who have that incorporated will then propagate out that incorporation, and over the effort of a few generations and a whole lot of people, that changes the whole shape of the culture in a subtle way.
Mm. I feel like it goes hand in hand with the idea of we've discovered evolution
Mm.
and haven't really incorporated that knowledge yet.
Mm.
But I feel like this sort of status game is easier to incorporate because it's only one part of the system. But once you have that, you get, well, what's the end result of status game? Oh, it's mate or not mate, and with who? And then that immediately brings in, like, if every single human being understood status hierarchies, sexual selection, and evolution, and it was all conscious, I feel like people would stop. At that point, what's the difference between finding a partner and eugenics?
Yeah. I feel like there
Because
is a
it's conscious.
difference, though. That
Yes. Well,
it's the
does
difference
eugenics have to
between.
be forced upon?
Well, I think eugenics would be the forced version, the top-down version. Whereas, like, we're talking about individual scale, it's
Right.
the equivalent of within an individual uh,
Right.
understanding and working with your emotions versus being an actor who can play them however they like, in a sense. Like it's there is a natural flow here, and understanding the shape of that flow doesn't stop that flow existing. Understanding the rules by which the game, in the technical sense, of mate selection occur doesn't change the fact that you are selecting a partner to have a life with based on certain criteria.
Yeah. I don't know. I just worry about a world in which all people know that every single interaction that they have with every single other person is a status move. You know, your postman shows up at the door, and in his mind and in your mind is both conscious of what I say to this person, the way I stand, and the way that I look at them changes my position in the status hierarchy. And all relationships are that way. I feel like it's a danger to genuine human interactions. There's a thing I keep hearing people say who are talking about status, guys who are giving advice to other men to raise their status to be more successful, which is the second you talk about understanding the game of status, you lose your status. And you get into this metagame.
What you
And
seen as cheating.
it becomes the point of this is all manipulation in order to up your rank so that you can have better success in life. And there was another quote, I think I've said it before, but I'll say it again. I got it from Brett Weinstein, I don't remember which pronunciation. Yeah, he's an evolutionary biologist, and he was asked why he doesn't spend all day in the sperm bank. And he said, once you understand the game, why would you want to play it? Because it's an absolutely brutal game in every way possible.
Mm.
You know, maybe there could be a scenario in which we, I don't know, find a way around the game. But I have a serious feeling that incorporation of this knowledge into the public consciousness by the average person is going to change a hell of a lot about how people interact.
Yes, but it's not catastrophic.
I didn't say it was. I didn't say it was bad. I said it was going to change things. And I have a concern that it'll change things on the level of socially, on the level of, say, transistor or nuclear, as it did for technology.
I feel like we've had similar magnitude changes before. Like if you go from Victorian times and their attitudes towards sex and sexuality, which in many ways were adaptive to the threat of sexually transmitted diseases and the lack of medical treatment in their time, and then you go through to the 70s with contraception,
that is technology based.
But it's cultural impact, and we're still the aftershocks of that, or the shocks of that, are still resonating and being worked out.
The best example, because it's the idea of the idea germ there would be sex isn't dangerous. Sex isn't something to be avoided. Well, sex isn't dangerous is probably the right word. And that's the germ that's spread everywhere. It isn't dangerous, it's casual, it means nothing.
And
that's the packet of ideas that's delivered this virus.
We're in the process of finding other dangers, like physical illness and unplanned childbirth leading to poverty are very obvious dangers. Take those away and you're left with only the psychological aspects, and it seems relatively harmless, but then over time you deal with those ones.
Well, there's the whole single mother problem. That's 100% a result of that.
Yeah.
And that certainly is not positive.
No.
Anyway, I think we're getting a bit off the weeds into the philosophical. I want to hear the rest of your story.
Yeah. So I got the list of women I've matched with, and much to my surprise, I'd felt good about how the night went, so I thought, okay, I'm going to guess I got 3. And I got 4, which...
That's a pretty accurate guess.
Yeah, much to my surprise. And also, I don't know what the stats are on the number of... how many guys did each woman tick? And it felt like that's getting up the Pareto distribution a little bit, and that was just how I felt about it looking at that, and it was...
I would estimate... I would estimate 1 in 10. That would be my guess. So if there was 20 of 30 guys, I would guess that each woman probably ticked 3 guys. Because I know that the top 20% of men come out as the top 50% in their ratings. So for a woman, if she was looking for average number 5 guy or above, she would pick 2 out of 10 for the whole range. But assuming she's not just looking for the average person, she's looking for someone higher up in her perspective, say 75%, so 7.5 or up, if you're going to do that out of 10 crap, then that would be 1 in 10 from her perspective.
So that
my guess would be if there was 30 guys, most women probably ticked 3 out of the lot.
Yeah, so that would place me about median or about average. Yeah, which it still feels good.
I don't understand how the statistics and math works out on where that places you, to be honest.
Well, I'm assuming that there was a skew towards there were the guys who got 10, because most of the women, or a lot of the women were like, yes, you, and there were a lot of guys who got 2 or 1.
Probably 1.
Yeah.
My guess it would be, 30 of you, 20 of them got 0. And then the 10 that remained, it probably was one of them probably got 20. And then the next one down would have got 10. And then the next one down would have got 5. And then it would have been 4, 4, 4, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 2, 2, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. And then 0.
Yeah.
Something like that.
And for me, that stands out well, it is a little bit of an ego boost, I'm not going to deny that. But also...
Take them when we can get them, eh?
Yeah. But it's...
Can't be too humble. It's not good for you.
It's the sense that I've climbed to that by gradual sort of self-improvement over the past nearly 4 years now. And like going from like having money in the bank but sleeping on a couch with my son up to the present, it feels like a good accomplishment, and the feminine recognition of that, even if only in seeing 3 minutes of the results, is rewarding.
I would put an asterisk on that, which is remember not to discount your intrinsic values. This isn't something that is just you've constructed in the past little while that's become of interest to women. You've always had intrinsic qualities that are valuable and interesting. You've just realized it yourself and found a way to display that is appealing. You've worked on your presentation and you've worked on rounding off enough corners that the gem that you were is now cut and polished.
At least on a couple of facets.
Yeah. More so than it was. It doesn't have dirt and grime and other rocks.
There were some things that...
But the gem was always there.
Yeah. There were some things that the ex has said sort of uninvited, because I need to keep contact with her because of contact with my son, although frankly she doesn't put much effort into that. But...
I have wondered if that's about to change.
Well, I've been debating with...
about that another time.
Yeah, I've been debating whether to say to her, stop talking about things that aren't directly related to your son, or I will block this and you can ask by email. And
I'm not going to pitch in on that. That is 100% your responsibility to figure out.
Yeah. But some of the things that she's said, she's a bit of a mess and dealing with her own life issues, and she made comments that this guy who was very attractive, that I would have given him a run for his money in attractiveness when I was in uni, and I think that some of my issues were ones she found attractive because they were manipulatable, so not positive ones. But it was weird, and I don't know how to interpret that. She thought I was very physically attractive then, and it sort of implies that there was something there that I'm now working on polishing. I'm not sure how to take
Mm.
that because it feels like it might be just her trying to manipulate or something still or something, and I'm just like, go away.
My honest belief is that she still wants to be with you,
Hmm.
but she can't get past herself. And at the time, you weren't ready to stand up to her.
Hmm.
I do believe that you could make it work with her,
Hmm.
but I don't think that's the right way forward.
Hmm.
I think it's too late at this point, and you shouldn't be sacrificing everything to save her.
Yeah.
She's moved on. Well,
Hmm.
not really. I don't think she's moved on.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
hence why I said I wonder if it's going to change. If all of a sudden you're going to see her try and be way more involved than she has been.
Hmm.
If things go well with this new potential partner.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's probably a good segue into
Yeah.
what
So,
happened the next day.
so I got the messages with the contact details in the morning, and I decided I wouldn't do anything until I got home from work. And only three of them had phone numbers, and it turned out one of the phone numbers was misspelled. But I called them, didn't get through, sent a text to not be creepy. Um, and then oh, the one who I remembered had replied to the text I sent, basically saying, I'm at work now, I'll be home around 5. And so it got to 6, and then I said, is it a good time to call now? And, yes. And so I called and talked, and we agreed to meet up on Friday. And uh, I also talked to another one, which I'm now thinking of contacting and saying something along the lines of position no longer available. I don't know. I need to work on that phrasing. But
Your services are no longer required.
yeah.
Mm.
So we met up on Friday, and she'd grown up in a Southeast Asian country, and uh, she's studying nursing and supporting herself and handling her money competently. And one of the things I'd been worried about with getting into dating was uh, slightly fed by Dad's horror stories of how he's seen so many chaotic New Zealand relationships and dictatorial wives and that sort of thing, possibly due to husbands not knowing how to stand up, but I don't know. So there was a little bit of a concern there, and I think she came from a background with, I want to say more traditional values, but it's like, what tradition? Probably values better aligned with physical reality.
I like that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's like I
That's
raised.
better than the traditional. Actually, I like that as a term. We've been this whole hubbub online of we need to return to traditional values,
Mm,
but it's not this tradition or that tradition. You're right. It's we need to return to values that are reflective of the reality of being human, of
mm,
evolution. That thing about being based.
yeah. So one of the
I
things that
think
I
we
did raise. Hmm?
I think I made a joke about this a while back. Actually,
Yeah.
I was talking about this with my wife earlier. I seem to remember making a joke that you should do this. There was a fad that happened a while back. I think it was called Passport Bros or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And it was, yeah, Western men leaving the West to find women from other nations that are more traditional because
Yeah.
there's none left there, and like bringing them home.
Yeah.
And of course, all the Western women were really angry about that because they were getting replaced, which is like, full circle. Here we go.
Yeah. Yeah. So she's been in this country for like 8 years. So um, she speaks like 4 languages because Southeast Asian country with a few
Yeah,
languages to
that's
start with.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's really amazing. I'm always admiring.
Yeah. Yeah, only speaking English over here, but I made the joke that I speak English and math, and she found that very funny because she hates math, so she thought that was perfect.
Yeah, that would be quite a good joke, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm glad that worked out.
And I asked her, giving the reasoning that things are so culturally chaotic these days, like, what do you think about the differences between men and women? She was like, yeah, men and women have different roles. And I reciprocated that and reinforced that. And basically, yeah, men and women are different and they do different things, and one cannot be the other.
I think you described that her ideal was to work like 4 hours a day and then have the rest of the afternoon to potter along in the garden or whatever else at home.
Yeah, that
Something like that.
was that was one of those offhand comments that sounds like it says a whole lot more than it said. And
Mm.
like, because I'd asked, like, given my interest in
That's a good
sustainability, I'd asked
that's a
her.
good question for a good date. Sorry to jump in, but I just
Yeah.
thought about that. For anyone at home, if you're going on a date, that's an amazing question to ask to understand who you're talking to.
Mm,
What is your ideal day?
mm,
If you could figure out exactly what you wanted from waking up to going to bed, your ideal average day, what would it be? Your
mm.
average Tuesday. And that's a way that you could understand so much about what a person wants in their
Mm.
life.
Yeah, or what sort of
Just
holidays? Yeah, like she's got a couple of chihuahuas, and she
that
goes.
is.
Yes, yes, and she goes tramping with them, and she's reasonably active, and she flies around to see family because they're scattered around the world a little bit. What?
Did you just say she goes tramping with chihuahuas?
I think it would be day tramps. That's the way she
Yeah,
described it.
I was gonna say, I think she's carrying the chihuahuas if she's tramping. There's no way in hell they're walking like any amount of distance.
Yeah, well, I haven't done that much tramping either. I've done 2 tramps. That was years ago, and I'd like to do more, but yeah. Um, but the point of that being that it wasn't, oh, I'd like to go get Gucci shoes or handbag or whatever it is, and so on, and stay in nice hotels. It was like she was talking about how if you fly to her home country via Melbourne, it's actually cheaper on the tickets, and it's like that much price to stay in Melbourne. So it works out this price to go the whole distance. Okay, good. She's budgeting. She's thinking about money, earning it, and then spending it, and like staying within her means. It was like good, as opposed to
I wonder how much it
credit
would
card.
be to buy slash build a regenerative farm in that country, seeing as you didn't say it by name.
Uh,
I
I
did
don't
think that
know.
straight away when you mentioned her nation of origin. I was like, I wonder what real estate's like there. It seems like it.
Well, stuff certainly grows faster
I
there.
missed it.
But like she grew up on a
But
family farm, so she said she understands how to um, how to grow stuff there. And oh, she had the story about how there was this chicken that some people had, and they were scared of picking it up, and they needed to check it out to make sure it wasn't unhealthy in some way. And she was like, "What's the problem? You pick up the chicken." It's like, where is the difficulty here? Yeah, but that sort of like groundedness, like not
mm,
I've lived in a city and never actually walked on dirt. It's
yeah,
like
it's the indoor cat phenomenon, which
yes,
is my favorite insult. It's like, oh hey, so you're an indoor cat, right? Okay, that makes sense.
yeah, yeah. The X fitted that, but yeah, this lady doesn't,
Yeah.
and we ended up talking for like 2.5 hours, and then she had to go somewhere. And
I'm glad you picked a spot that you did. Like I
mm,
seen your whole list of options. That was such a good pick. It's an
well,
amazing spot up there.
she said which suburb she was in, and I suggested the one that you'd suggested because it was close.
Yeah,
And
she's up there somewhere.
well, not up
Interesting.
the hills. She's near there.
Yeah. We're
Um,
planning on moving back to Christchurch in a couple of years, by the
mm,
way, and we're going to pick a spot up on the hill there somewhere. So I might be doing these in person at some point.
yeah, that'd be good. Yeah. And
Yeah.
what is it? The name of the place has changed to something that made a good pun with her name, and she found that funny too.
Yeah, I
I
actually
pointed
thought that
out.
was quite funny. From the old name to the new name, that was quite good.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad it went really well. It's nice to hear sort of positive
Hmm.
actual success story, because we've been working on stuff and talking about stuff
Yeah.
for quite a while, and now it's like, whoa, actual progress.
Yeah.
It's
There was
not
something I
just
found, yeah, not just incremental progress, but an actual step. And
yeah, and not just something that you see in the mirror and go like,
mm,
I can tell that I am different as a person. You're getting
mm,
external recognition.
mm. Yeah, and there
So I hope things will
was
work out.
like obviously my son and package deal, and she was at pains to reinforce that that wasn't a problem because she had female friends with kids, I think sibling, I'm not sure, who
Mm.
um, had been worried about finding a guy, and she was at pains to reinforce that that wasn't a problem for her, and she's living with family in New Zealand, and sometimes helps pick up their daughter from primary school and things like that. And
She also said she wanted to have her own children.
yes,
So at that point, as long as that's on the table, then a previous child's not going to be a big problem.
mm,
You obviously have to watch out for the stepmother problem a little bit, but I'm
mm,
pretty sure that that's something that can be selected out. Like I imagine that that's tied in pretty heavily with the type of partners that your previous partner was.
mm,
I imagine that actually wholesome human beings don't fall prey to the same phenomenon.
yeah, yeah. But
Just a hunch.
and we were both from slightly different angles wanting to express that relationships aren't always happy, that sometimes it's not happy and you've got to work through stuff. It's like, yes, yes, that's very true. And you don't go in expecting it to be happy. And uh, the idea of bringing up things to work through together and building that emotional connection instead of blaming and so on. It's like, of course, there's
Yeah,
the ideal that you aim for versus the reality, but at least having a common ideal is a massive good point. And like
yeah.
her past relationship
Painful
that,
as painful as it is, at the end of the day, it's really a contract.
mm,
You
yeah,
and I will stay together and work together and make sure that we're both happy, and we'll just fucking make it work.
yeah, and
That's the deal. It's a deal. How could
yeah,
it be anything else?
yeah. And her past relationship that fizzled, that didn't go anywhere, because long distance and reasons, like he'd never introduced her to his family, but she'd introduced him to her family, and family's important. Like she's got a lot of family, and they're all important to her, and so on. And that was something that had obviously hurt her, and it's like, no, I told my mum I was coming here. Yeah, and like,
Oh, she would have loved that.
yeah,
That's
so
pretty on the cute side to say that.
yeah, so
Which is a
we
good thing. All you twits in the background.
we
I feel like
agreed
it'd be
to,
cool to take Tasman to go and visit her family overseas.
yeah, that'd be
It'd
a,
be a hell of a learning experience.
yeah.
I wonder if you'll end up there and do these shows by satellite.
Oh, I don't
Anyway,
know.
a little early to, I know, but still.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway,
There's
you're
she
saying
hasn't finished her
plan.
nurse's training for New Zealand. She's actually 1 year older than me.
Hmm.
Um, I think that my I think I'm mature for my age.
Uh, yeah, yeah,
Because like
I'd say so.
that's been a pattern since childhood, like playing with older kids and so on. And I suspect that's why like, I have ages for three of the women um, who text me. And one of them said, I don't think this will work because of the age gap, and I don't know how old she is. One of them was 38, and then this one who I had the first date with was 1 year older than me. It's like, that's not a big difference. But it's
Mm.
like, I think that yeah, I'm mature for my age based on that data.
The age thing about women wanting men who are older than them is not just about age.
Mm.
It's about wanting someone that they can admire and look up to.
Mm.
Someone who's older than you is generally more mature and more put together. That's
Mm.
the actual thing that women are selecting for. It's not number bigger than my number.
Mm.
Um, and I think very easily that you could be someone who would be someone that a far more mature adult in terms of age than yourself could look up to.
Mm.
You're not a goofy person for your age. You're not exemplary of your age. You're further along,
Mm.
which is kind of sad for the average person of your age because it shouldn't be the case.
Mm.
But, you know, leaving societal problems aside,
Yeah,
I
it's like
think you'll do just fine.
even the attitude towards aging. Like I've noticed a few grey hairs in the beard, and I'm like, oh, will that make streaks? will that? And it's like excited to see over the next few years if they just go salt and peppery. Which oh well, that's something. But it's like it'd be nice to have like a scholarly
Yeah,
streak.
I've said that to my wife. Is that I look forward to being grey because I think it's going to look awesome, and she thinks I'm a twit for that. I'm still really jealous of your uniform color of beard. By the way, I don't know how well it comes across in the cameras. Yes, I've shaved, but
Yeah.
my mustache is a different color to the rest of my hair,
Uh,
and that's really annoying because I have like this awesome, really dark brown everything, and then my mustache is borderline blonde.
I think the bulk helps a fair bit because
It stands out.
it it's like you're not looking at one hair or one layer of hair. You're looking at a whole bunch, and it sort of merges together into a relatively uniform color. Like I don't know if you can see it, but like that's blondie there, and then there because there's more thickness. It's like that's definitely darker,
Mm.
but yeah.
There was a guy I met in Hamner. I used to play pool with him every now and then, and he had the same thing. He had half blonde, half ginger was the other side,
Mm.
but it was vertically split down the middle. It was the weirdest thing in the world, and he rocked full beard. He went for it. But yeah, one side was ginger, and the other side was like white. It was such a
Oh,
strange look. Um, but you got to give him props. He didn't shave it. He kept it.
yeah,
So
yeah.
certainly unique.
But anyway, so she she wanted to move slower rather than faster. Like she's got her nurse's training to finish. That's got I think 1 more year to run, and so she's not going to. She's going to be doing a few hours, but like keep in contact, like regular meetings, and build something over time. And she's going away for the next 2 months. So I'm away next week and busy the week after. Oh, was that the slot? But yeah, so I'm meeting her again once before she leaves, and then she's away for a couple of months, and she wanted to exchange details so that we could video call and stuff and stay in contact. And then like it's not, I'm not expecting anything to build in that time, but I'm hoping to maintain, or at least
I think you
maintain.
can expect it to build.
Mm. Well, then I'll be pleasantly surprised, and I'd prefer pleasantly surprised to unpleasantly surprised.
Oh, I think you can be pretty safe in assuming that she wouldn't be going to all of that trouble if she wasn't
Mm.
trying to build something.
Yeah.
Like you've got the yes.
Mm.
I think at this point it's just putting in the time.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, you have to see how it goes, build it over time. The wanting to take things slow is a really good sign. I'm
Mm.
actually quite happy to hear that. That's not something that you talked about when we were messaging earlier.
Mm.
Um, it's interesting that there's that timeline of the nursing thing, so end of next year.
Mm.
And I'm sort of wondering that's very early hints dropping in of that might be the time for something more.
That's down the track a bit, and I'm not
It
ready to
is.
think about yet.
Okay, yes, but you have to realize she's laid out a plan for you.
Yeah, and her
You've
biological
had a
clock's
single
ticking.
date.
Yeah.
Yes, you've had a single date, and she's laid out, I'm going to keep in remote contact with you while I'm overseas. We're going to have dinner and a movie before I go.
Yeah.
And let's spend the next year having regular dates and building something. She's laid that out for you.
I'm not
She
sure how much of
certainly
that was
wants
said explicitly, but it's like that's definitely the impression I believe was shared. And she said
well,
goodbye with a hug. So yeah,
I think it's positive movement. From being from a more traditional background in the way that she is, you will have to think about how to act in that manner. You have to be a bit more. You have to move a little bit faster on the big things than Westerners do, and you have to be far slower on the things that the Westerners consider little things that are actually big things.
Yeah,
I'm sure you can take that meaning.
Yeah, I'd be lying if I said there weren't aspects of my personality that just as a guy would be annoyed with that. But like, I look at the whole thing and it's like,
you really need to keep those aspects under control. I'm going to be very direct about that. Those parts of you need to not be manifest for a long time.
And the negative consequences in the past of that happening quickly and leaving sort of a little bit of mental scarring, you could say, are going to do a good job at that, I think.
Yeah. And remember that you're looking for a wife. You're not looking for a fling.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I was. Well, I said I wasn't looking for a fling. I was looking for long term when I was at the speed dating, and yeah.
And she agreed to a date, and she's got this vague plan in the background.
Yeah, and
she's got a plan for her life for the next year, and I think very intentionally the year after that is open to interpretation, and it'll remain that way. I think it's likely. So I think you've got that year to figure out yes or no. Because this is the stage you're in.
Yeah.
Will this be someone I want to be my wife or not? And if it is, then you need to make it happen.
Yeah.
Like she won't wait.
One of the
and she's not just going to accept the temporary label.
I want. One of the things I was thinking going into the speed dating was that I'd be okay dating a series of women, like, try, okay, that didn't work. Try, that didn't work. Try, that didn't work. But I only wanted to sleep with one other woman. Yeah.
I think you should wait until you get married for whoever that is.
Yeah.
Actually be serious and grown up about it.
I'm not sure if I'd have the strength of will to say no after half of a year, but if that's her preference, then I definitely support it. And working that out internally, and like there's strong impulses there to fight, and like being honest about the strength of those impulses versus I made this choice and I'm gonna stick with it 100%. And
it'll probably end up being a conversation.
Yeah.
It probably will.
One of the things I talked about on the dates, I feel like I want to check with her that she would call it a date, but it's like I look at it and it's like I don't see what else it could be. Yeah. It wasn't just meeting for coffee.
No.
Or ginger beer.
You talked about kids.
Yeah.
Why don't you just have decaf?
I don't like coffee.
You seem relatively okay.
I've never drunk coffee.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But she wanted ginger beer, and I thought that's a good idea. I'll get one too, and then I paid for them. Yeah. So like she was pulling out her card, but then I just paid for both.
Gentlemen.
That was the intent, and I'd described that I wanted to progress deliberately with the relationship in the sense of making a step consciously rather than just being swept along. It's like, okay, do we want to take this step? Yes. This is the decision we're making now, and take step. And because that's not really what happened in the last relationship, and I don't want to look back and say, yeah, I should have known better.
Well, I think the fact that you're, I was gonna reference a particular reason why this is going so well. To be honest, everything you said is a reason why this is looking positive. So there's not much to say really other than congratulations.
Even
I really hope it works out well, something like that.
Yeah, me too. And like, there's an element of me that was like, she was very nervous about getting into dating and not having dated a Kiwi guy before, not knowing how that would go. And there's an element of me that's like, I don't want you to end up with the bad guys, right? So I want this to work because I don't want you to end up with mean guys and so on, because that's entirely a possibility.
Well, and that's what she's afraid of.
Yeah.
She knows full well that Western men, a large proportion of them, are not people that she would want to be involved with for very, very obvious reasons. And she's right to be bloody cautious about that. It's hard not to see, as someone who's found their person, the initial meeting is fateful. I have some issues with leaving everything up to fate, but and attributing things to fate, because it takes away agency. But it seems very interesting that that's the intention and concern that she had. And then I don't know how many of those things that she went to.
One.
And then you guys had this. So there you go. And it would have been. See, this would be an interesting question for, say, third date or something further down the line. Would be asking her how many people she ticked on that night. That would be a very interesting question, because the answer might, I'd be curious to know. I can't
or how many people she matched with. Like, I'm a little bit hesitant with that, because in fairness,
you don't
I'd have
want to
to
know how many guys ticked her. You want to know who she ticked. You want to know if you were one of 1 or 1 of 10.
Would, because I ticked more than one, and I got more than one match, and then it's like, she was the one that stuck in my mind.
She was the preference, yeah. She was first choice.
Yeah. Yeah, so out of the 30 that were there, it's a bit harder to pick because it blurred up so much because of the speed at which everything happened. But I remembered her, and when I saw that that she was on the list of matches, it was like, I'll call her first.
Yeah. See, now that's an important detail, that you have that to back up. It's like, yes, I did tick other women than you, but you were the one that I called. When I had options, you were the one I wanted.
Because I did set up a let's check in again after you're less busy, and set up a meeting with one other, and I'm sort of mentally composing a text or email or something to say, actually, I don't think it'll work, or something.
Yeah. No, I think you should send a message. You should write that message as if your prospective partner will read it, assuming that if this is the partner that you found, then you should write the message to this other person saying, no, I'm not going to meet you, in a way that you would be happy with your potential future partner looking back and reading. So pay some compliment to her in there, is my advice.
Yeah.
Write it in such a way of like, I'm sorry, I don't want to go out on a date with you anymore, as I think I might have found my person.
Yeah, I made a real connection with someone else I met at the event, and I can't
in good faith.
Yeah, well, not just good faith. Like I can't. There's a short circuit there when I think of trying to time
Yeah,
essentially or date two women to.
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
To have good faith to the person that I am. You're in the dating process, and you pick this person, and you want it to be them.
Hmm.
So, in order to be good faith, you have to put everything in that. You go, no,
Yeah.
it's you.
But good
I'm
faith
not
and
even going to attempt with anyone else,
yeah.
and that is good faith.
Well,
That's what I mean.
it is good faith, but it's like that implies a sort of a choice where it doesn't feel like a choice. It feels like a yeah, I can't really do that. It would be going against myself.
That's what bad faith is. Well, against yourself, so you have a moral integrity to not act in bad faith.
Hmm.
Right. But I'm simply meaning that if I wanted to go on a date with the second person, I feel like I'd be dealing in bad faith with the one I actually want,
Hmm.
and I don't want to. That's what I mean by the good faith statement.
Hmm.
She's the one. And even if it may not work, I'm not going to risk it by seeing you. I'm sorry.
Hmm.
Brutal, but from what you said, it seems to be how you're feeling.
Hmm.
And I'm sure that she would certainly appreciate it.
Hmm.
There's nothing that she'd love more to hear you say to another woman, sorry, I'm not interested in you because this is the one for me.
Hmm.
She's the one, and it's not you.
Yeah, because something that I think I've alluded to this or said this in a different way before, but yeah, it's the house cat thing that I've had conversations with Dad about how, from his perspective, it was how no one knows how to fix things anymore or use tools, and he's tried to help people with their boats, and they'll come along, and it's like, how do I plug this in, holding a bare wire, and it's like, well, there's a circuit breaker. So how do you know that's a circuit breaker? The wires from it go to the battery. But what do I do with this? That's positive. That's negative. What are those? And it's like, what? You bought a boat. You don't even know positive from negative. What? And so on. And Dad had offered some help and the use of his tools for this guy to get his boat together. And, oh, can you help me set your boat up like yours? Sure, here are some tools. What? How do I do this? And so Dad ended up doing most of the work. And he was complaining about that happening a lot. And talking to this woman that I went on the date with, I got the impression that she, like lifting up the chickens, it's like, what is the problem here? It's like, you do the thing. This is an obvious thing. And the connection to living in the real world instead of living in the culture. That's an interesting distinction. Living in the culture
Ooh,
versus living in the
I like
world.
that. Yeah. Yeah, the culture's constructed this playpen that's called a city.
Yes.
There was a line from a guy that I listened to a long time ago. It was the entertainment podcast where he said, guy went to Africa and he was talking about looking at the animals and like all they do is eat and not die. And the guy's like, yeah, that's why we left. That's why we built this nice city, so I don't have to worry about a tiger eating me. And it's like, that's it. These are playpens.
Mm.
That's what we've built. This is a protective space where everything's okay and it's safe and easy. That's why we built it. And of course, like we want to keep kids safe and we want to build a new world. But by escaping from all the hardship, we escape from all necessity to have skill. Yeah, I've just undergone the process in reverse. Being a city person coming to the farm, the amount of times I've turned to my boss or someone I work with and being like, how do I do this? And they like reach down and like look me in the eye and turn something really simply, and then it works. It's humiliating, humbling, one of the other.
Yeah.
Because immediately after that happens, you go, it's like the most obvious thing in the world.
Yeah.
There's something about the process of you don't see the obvious thing when you don't need to because you lived in a city. There's an attitude. There's that line about when something breaks on the farm, there's no one to call.
Mm.
When something breaks in the city, you call someone and they
Mm.
fix it for you. When something breaks on the farm, you fix it. Well,
Yeah.
I don't know how. I've never done that before. Figure it out.
Yeah.
And you do. And it's a pain in the ass and you're banging your head against it, frustrated, like, oh, fuck this. And then you get it and you're like, I can do it. And the next time
Oh.
you just do it straight away. And
Yeah.
that's the whole thing about being in this kind of environment.
Yeah. There was a thing that similar to that, but in a sort of more contained scenario. Dad was an aircraft engineer, and someone had a part within the wing that he'd unbolted, and he was trying to get it out. And he'd been trying for like 10 minutes to get this part through the hole, and he couldn't get it out. Come over here, see if you can do this thing. It's like, how do you take that out? You mean this part? What? Because just the spatial reasoning and probably a few bits of dyslexia thrown in to help, but the here is an object fit through hole.
My wife's like that. It's real brutal. I asked a colleague of mine round to help me move a couch. She's
Yeah.
pregnant, she couldn't help. And we were struggling to get this couch through a doorway for like half an hour. Like literally half an hour, every single angle possible. And eventually I just turned to her and was like, hey, can you help? I know you're good at this. She gets up and she looks at it for half a second and she says, move it this way. And straight through. And we're like two grown ass men standing there in front of her. She just sitting there having a couple watching us with the kids for half an hour. And just instantly first try goes through. And boy, did we feel stupid. You know, I came home not long ago. She's like 8 months pregnant at this point. And the couch was just in a different room. She'd done it on her own, 8 months pregnant with no help. And two of us couldn't do it together. And the other guy, he's like 6'5", he's massive. He still couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, that's a fun one there.
Yeah.
I feel like things like this I'm not a big fan of social programs, but I feel like there's a bunch of things that we should sort of maybe not mandatory do, but make really encouraged and a part of culture to help band-aid a lot of the problems that we have.
Mm.
You know, if every city kid had to go as part of their school education and spend, you know, 2 weeks on a farm
Yes.
doing real work, or the idea of like every single kid has to go through basic training in the military. Like
Mm.
you need to go do something that's hard and you need to go and fix things when you don't have help and just make it work. And then you can go back to your comfortable life. But you need to have done that.
Mm.
And I think even speed dating could be another one of those things of like, it should be a very common thing for maybe as a university program, whatever. Instead of just find someone, we hold these things and you're all encouraged to come
Mm.
and you get some, you know, some reward for it or whatever. I feel like there's a lot of little programs like that that could be massively beneficial to the society if we made them standard.
Mm.
Like particularly like military training for all high school teenagers, or
Mm.
you know, 2 on a farm having to do actual hard things like chase down a calf that's running from you, or this fence is broken, we have to fix it. Just whole bunch of things. There's a leak in this pipe. What do you do?
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, what do you think? Like, we don't give any of the answers here. You got a whole suite of tools. You need to make it work. Look at it and figure it out. We'll see you later.
Then they'll come back to an absolutely horrible solution, pull it off, and put the proper one in.
Yeah. And that happens a lot
Yeah.
in the early days of what I've been doing. And very on, it was very frustrating. I had that mindset of like, this is you're setting me up to fail. But once you've gone through that quite a few times and you come out the other side, you realize why you're doing it.
Mm.
And I think I wouldn't do anything differently if I was bringing someone in to train them.
Yeah.
Like, you can go and spend a whole day doing this job that's going
Mm.
to take me 5 minutes. But the point is,
Yeah.
If I just tell you how to do it, you wouldn't have had you didn't have to think.
Mm.
And what we need you to do is think to solve problems, not just do the things you know how to do.
Yeah. The boss at work, he's younger than me. I'm the oldest in the office, which is freaky. But he's made deliberate choices like that. Like, you've got CAD software where you can draw fancy 3D models of whatever you're making. You've got the 2D equivalent where you can draw out 2D drawings in drafting software. He got the paper version. Like, these are discs which are big with a track along the top and a track down here that moves along on the top track. And then there's a ruler that you can move around so it stays parallel to all the time, so you can draw a horizontal line anywhere. Then you can turn it to get any angle you want, and it's like the proper pencils, which have like a 3mm diameter lead, but then you sharpen that down in a special sharpener to like a needle point. So, and you
It
don't
used
want
to
it
be
too.
a real job.
Yeah, and we've
It
got.
used to be drafting.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, my grandmother was
Yeah.
one of the first women in the country to get a job actually being a draftswoman.
I should send
Back
you.
when
Yeah.
it wasn't really allowed. I've got some of her equipment from back then that she's kept for posterity.
Would you
It's just
like
like
to?
a ruler.
Yeah.
No, that's mine.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, she'd love to talk to you about that.
Oh,
Just
I will send you some
out of
photos
fascination.
to forward to her because we've got 5 of these things set up in the office. And
Yeah, that was
I,
her job. She did it for like 20 years.
yeah, I realized recently that a lot of the reason he'd chosen this wasn't because it's just as fast, although once you incorporate mistakes made and fixed and made and fixed and made and fixed in CAD versus actually having to think doing hand drafting, it probably ends up a similar speed. But I realized you can't be. Sorry?
Measure twice, cut once kind of philosophy.
Yeah, yeah, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
Or I don't
you
want
get
to
it
put the
right
wrong number in
because
because
there's
then I
going to
have
be
to rub
cost.
it out.
Yeah, there's cost for doing it wrong. Whereas
Yeah,
in the digital realm, the cost is it's there, but it's sort of meh.
yeah,
Like I've
like
often wondered if you could, in the same fashion, analog somehow analogize. That can't be a word.
analog
Make an
eyes.
analog, yeah, make an analog equivalent of programming for the same reason,
Mm.
because it's very easy to just go for spaghetti code and then clunk. Like it does the job. It uses like 12 gigs of RAM. Doesn't matter. Yeah, it does. So it
Well,
would be really cool if there'd be an analog way of scaling it way down.
mm,
Say if you had a tiny wee sort of Raspberry Pi machine that has the actual what we want your tiny little part of the program to use in terms of resources. Like, think about the greatest names in computer development history. You've
mm,
got like Steve Jobs, you've got Bill Gates, people like this. Even not quite Zuckerberg, people probably a little bit earlier than that. They did amazing work and did amazing things because they had no room for error.
mm.
You know, there's speeches of him talking about writing the original operating system in like bytes, measuring in like hundreds of bytes. We had like 46,000 bytes, and that's how much we had to write
Yeah,
the operating system. It was 12,000. That was it. It's like, this is their budget, not a single bit more. Everything has to be amazingly efficient. You've got this much to work with.
yeah,
Back when memory was like 8 megabit or less.
yeah. Well, there are marble computers. Have you seen those?
Marble.
Yes. So you have a pegboard and you peg certain contraption things to it, and like you drop the marble in and it dribbles down and changes the state of bits so that if it's a 1 it'll divert it that way, if it's a 0 it'll divert it that way, and it flops it each time, so you can make calculators out of this thing.
Right. Yeah, that's sort of in the realm, I suppose. I sort of
Yeah,
if you could find a way to physically limit it in such a ridiculous fashion that a programmer would have to do the same equivalent of what you're doing with the physical drawing of
mm.
this is one of the reasons why iPhones don't actually have that much RAM. but yet everything still works well.
Yeah.
And then you see, the Android equivalents or whatever, and they have like 5 times as much. And people go, oh, more RAM, that's more better. Like, it ends up being the same because,
Mm.
oh, I have more budget. Cool, I can be less careful about accessing RAM.
Yeah.
Because, on the iPhone, it's like, you use too much RAM, lol, your program just got killed. And the phone user's not going to be like, damn, this phone doesn't have enough RAM. They're going to go, your app sucks. And then they're going to uninstall it.
Yeah.
Efficiency is mandated because of the lack of resource.
Mm. Yeah. I'm sort
You
of
want to
dealing
have
with that a little
both.
bit, fighting with it on the computer at work because I've got a program that I wrote which models the a locomotive from firebox through to smokestack and the engine and lots of math, like 3,000 lines of code. It's a little bit hideous, and I'm looking forward to someone who's actually got a little bit of programming skill, going through it, tearing some hair out, and then helping me fix it.
Yeah. If I had
But
more time, I would have written a shorter letter.
sorry,
If I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter
yeah,
saying that the best programmers write shorter code.
yes, yeah. This could be made better, definitely, and one of the issues with it is that it's iterating towards steady state. So it takes an initial guess, which is basically fixed, and then it's like, okay, we have these things, these conditions, and so okay, everything moves in this way, this way, this way, this way. And so you've got something like 20 or 30 different factors which are all moving. Like there's the generated.
It's always simulator.
Yeah, yeah. The hot gas flow through the boiler is modeled, calculated. The steam generated by that is calculated. There are a few bits where it's not a full physical system, so you can see, okay, this would make too much steam, or this wouldn't make enough steam, and then you just look at the graph. But it's trying to get all those values to settle down to stable final states is a bit of a fight. And working out how to solve that fight well when they're unstable, like a tiny, essentially random change to this one sends that one unstable, and then that, or a little bit unstable, and that instability propagates through 3 other things, and yeah,
the cascading,
yeah, it's a good few months of work to build that program and get it working, and then we add a bit, and then it doesn't work as well.
Yeah, it sounds. You sort of got the scope problem there.
Yeah, but the scope is build a simple version. Okay, now add in this piece of physics. Okay, now add in this piece of physics. Can you model it with this too? Can you make this bit adjustable?
Yeah, that's scope creep. Scope creep. You're going to end up being a full-time software developer unless you put a stop to that. It always happens.
But it's
mission creep. That's the real word, isn't it?
Yeah, we're modeling a physical system, so we kind of need to model the physics.
Yeah, and then you're just getting into physics simulations. They ain't simple
No,
to make.
no,
Yeah.
even the simple ones, it's like,
yeah, at a certain point, you're just going to have to get real software to model it.
I don't think there's any other software to do this. Like we've copied the best software that we could find to model an aspect of this. Like in terms of real physics, yes, there's real physics modeling software, but like there's differences in how our boiler works to any other boiler. So that's never been done.
You just have to use the real physics modeling and then put your model into it, because the physics modeling will just be a physics engine, and you just need to put in your CAD designs into it effectively.
It's not in CAD, it's all numbers. This is
right, but this is what I mean. Real physics software will have a CAD incorporated element so you can visualize. And then you get your numbers in and out and visualization, and that's how you can incorporate CAD.
Yeah, but the CAD is a display. It's like pretty colors on a picture, and that's the final step.
Yeah.
Yeah, instead I've got a dozen different graphs you can look at. Some of them 3D too.
Oh, here
Yeah.
we're getting off the topic a little bit. We're
Yeah.
probably done, I'd say.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. We've
Good,
rambled a
good
bit and
story.
sorry?
I'm glad. I was going to say it's a good story. I'm glad things worked out well, and it's nice to see some real progress,
Mm.
external recognition,
Yeah. There was something I came
goals
across.
achieved.
Yeah. Um, Someone looked at guys trying to get girlfriends, girls trying to get boyfriends, um, and the universal advice of improve yourself, work on yourself, da 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 da. And he described it as being told to go to university and not being told how long the course was. Because like I went to university for a whole year and nothing happened. I still don't have a job. And he
Mm,
he gave the sort of rough number of like 5 years. You'll probably have to work on yourself for 5 years, starting from scratch to get a girlfriend. And you'll probably get one before then, but if you're thinking of that timeline, then you're not going to be sitting there whinging about how the time came and went and nothing happened. You'll be focusing on how you can keep progressing toward that long-term goal.
hmm, interesting.
Yeah. This is actually
I
the
wonder how much
guy.
that tracks.
I don't know, but he's that guy I suggested you look into
How many years ago did your
coaching.
previous partnership fall apart?
Start of 2020, and it's now nearing the end of 23. So that's near probably
3,
three and a
4,
half, 3.5, 4 years. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah, that's close. Because I'm just thinking about me. We met when I was 21, so that would have been late teens, and that's probably about right.
mm,
I started getting my shit together as an adult.
mm,
Hmm. Interesting thought. I think it's a good frame for a young person to have because I seem to remember it was. I'm pretty bad at waiting for anything.
mm,
Um, and there was sort of always a disappointment of I'll go out and I'll meet someone tonight, and a lot of that, and that was never very helpful. There's another one of those things that it's been on my mind heaps lately. We'll talk about it next time. We don't have people teaching us about being men and relating to women, or being women and relating to men.
mm,
Like all of a sudden, we stopped teaching our kids how to be men or women,
mm.
and then at the same time, we have this whole big hubbub about men and women, and the trans stuff and all of that,
Yeah.
which seems probably symptomatic of that.
Mm. There was
There's
something I
another
heard.
thing I sort of
Yeah.
no, no, no.
About someone bringing out this study where they proclaimed that look, men are far more similar to women than they are different. The you look at the averages and they're really close, and it's like the men and women are basically the same. And I think it was Jordan Peterson talking about it. It's like
That's a leap.
true,
Last bit's a leap. Yeah.
yeah. Well, it's true that men and women are far more similar than they are different, but if you're trying to relate to someone, if they're identical to you, then there's nothing to know. If there's one difference, that's the thing you need to know.
It's all frame. You say we're far more similar than we are different.
Mm,
Well, yeah, we're the same species.
yeah.
Like, what are you expecting here? When you say they're more similar than different, as opposed to what?
Yeah.
Like, yes, women are very not similar to frogs, and men are more similar. Like, what's the comparison measure here? We're more similar than different. That seems completely arbitrary.
Yeah.
Say we're more similar than
Yeah.
what? We're more different than what? And also, they're the same thing.
I think at least the
It's
way
the
I
same thing. You have
Mm.
Average man, average woman, the distance between them, whether you're measuring it as similarity or difference, it's the same distance.
I think it was comparing it with like one standard deviation, like as a
Well, on all of these different,
well,
okay, it'll be all of these different traits that human
yeah,
beings have and
well,
where we line up.
yeah, the overlapping bell curves and the fact that they overlap far more than they don't, like that would be dissimilar, and that would be similar. But at the
Right, I
same
see. Yes.
time, uh,
Yeah.
80%
The
of
peak of the
men,
curve is irrelevant because it's the tails that matter.
yeah,
We don't complain about
well,
the average, we complain about the extreme.
yeah, those few men crazy enough to be CEOs.
Yeah. Yeah, or the women that sacrifice their entire lives to help others.
Yeah, Mother Teresa. Yeah, it's an
Mothers.
example. It's like, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
So yeah, I'm looking forward to hopefully building something with someone.
I'm looking forward to talking to her at some point. I already am. I feel like I don't know. I feel like it's a weird analogy. I feel like a dad being like, I need to talk to this young lady.
Well, I described you
Doesn't
to
mean
her.
that you're older than me. That doesn't matter at all.
I described you to her as a friend who, where we've basically been each other's therapists.
Yeah, something like that. With the second you said I described you to her, I went, oh no. Oh God, what is this description going to be?
No, you're not a
Funny
prick
that I
who's nice
worry
to
about my
people.
description.
Yeah.
What was that?
A prick who's nice to people. No.
That sounds relatively accurate.
Yeah, yeah.
Your friendly neighborhood asshole.
Yeah.
There's something that I really like in that contradiction, sustaining the contradiction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually quite like that. I should that on a shirt or something. That's great.
Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. Oh well, I think we can probably call it there. That's a good end.
Yep, sounds good. Yeah,
Nice,
so,
wee wholesome story. No big societal collapses today.
yeah, for once. Yeah. Oh, well. Good night.
Night, everybody.